So yeah, welcome everyone. I'm John. Um, yeah, I'd like to start out by saying it's a real honor to be here. Um, I heard Soria say in one of the Sunday sits that he did recently that this event has been going on for 6 or so years now, and not one Sunday has been missed. And just coming here over the last few months, seeing this sort of the community that's here is like it's very inspiring. It's very warm. It's very welcoming. And so to have the chance to like sit here and speak with you is yeah, like I said, it's a real honor, and I'm very much appreciative of the space. With that being said, is there any new faces here? People who are like here for the first time? Oh wow, big welcome. Cool. Yeah. And are there any like first time meditators? People who've never meditated before? Okay, awesome. Yeah. Yeah, so as Pan said, I'll start off with a talk for 30 minutes or so. Then we'll get into some guided meditation. And then there'll be a chance at the end for some questions and answers. So yeah, my name is John. This is my 4th month at the Monastic Academy. I'm a member of the residential training program. It's a full-time residential training program in mindfulness and leadership. Yeah, I've been here. This is my 5th month starting. My 5th month started in July, and I'll finish up at the end of August. So the time is just going very, very quick. And I think for this talk, I'd just like to yeah, share my story of how I got like into mindfulness, how I started like taking it seriously, yeah, and the journey to there, because I certainly haven't been practicing my whole life. I only started, well, it's 5 years ago now. So yeah, I'd just like to share the story of how I came to find mindfulness, and then how I continue to practice mindfulness, what I actually do to get on the cushion each day, and why I do it. Yeah, so I was basically pretty happy teenager in secondary school. I guess you guys call that high school. I had just finished my exams. I got really good grades. I got accepted into the architecture course that I wanted in university. And yeah, I remember just that transition from high school to college that summer. I started to experience like depression and anxiety, and I had never sort of I had no knowledge of like what mental health was. I was very ignorant to the issue of mental health. And this kind of hit me out of nowhere, and it was a deeply scary time, difficult time, lonely time. And the most difficult part about it was like I was experiencing this suffering, this depression, this anxiety. That was bad. But what was really bad was this sort of fear that I had kind of in my solar plexus, that like the solutions being offered to the suffering I'm experiencing now are not good enough. I know it in my bones. And that was like, it was just terrifying because I didn't have any other, I didn't know where to look, I didn't know who to speak to, I didn't know where to go. The people I went to were offering solutions that were, yeah, that's good, but it's not like, it's not solving this fear, this uncertainty. So yeah, that was a deeply scary and lonely time, and I think it really opened me up, you know. And I remember finding a YouTube video while I was Googling like how to be happy, and Eckhart Tolle came up in a little, I think it was like a suggested videos box or something, because I still wasn't going anywhere near the mindfulness section. I still didn't give that any validity. I was more, how do you get rich? How do you fix your relationships, etc. Again, that was what was offered to me, so I was kind of exploring that and just feeling more and more cynical, more and more like that's not going to cut it. What to do? And I found this video, like I said, of Eckhart Tolle, and can everyone hear me out there? Yeah, I found this video of Eckhart Tolle, and how many people here have like heard him or watched him? I'm guessing a few. Yeah, if you haven't watched him, I'd like recommend it. And those of you who have seen him will know what I'm talking about when I say that there's like, it's not so much the content of what he's saying, it's more like there's this kind of peace and this presence in him. And I didn't know what it was at the time, but I just remember watching that video and going, this is something like what I'm looking for. This isn't a fixed relationship, this isn't $200,000 a year salary, this is something worth pursuing. This is something that might really help. And so yeah, he was saying meditate. So I said, okay, I'll give it a try. Yeah, and pretty quickly I actually listened to a guided meditation by a guy named John Kabat-Zinn. It was a simple body scan meditation. And something about that, it just felt like when I took off the headphones, it felt like my brain had just had a shower or something. Like things were just clean and fresh, and the usual container of suffering that I was in at that time just felt a bit more like I had a bit more distance from it. I was just like, whoa, this is powerful. And so yeah, from there I started to take meditation pretty seriously. I found a teacher in Dublin. They were hard to find at that time. This was like 5 years ago, and mindfulness is like getting very popular in Dublin, in Ireland at the moment. But at that time, it was still, this guy was like hard to find. I had to really search online to find him. And he had like a small little website. His phone number was on it. I rang him up. And this was still like this was a scary thing to do. Like, I'm ringing this sort of stranger up who teaches this thing called mindfulness that I don't even really know what that is, but I know it's helping. And so I just kind of had to push through and say, this seems to be working, so I'm going to go for it. And I arranged a session with him. I drove out to his house. It was in like a pretty like poor part of Dublin. He had like hand built a shed in his back garden that he gave these lessons in. And I told him that I'm doing a lot of suffering, experiencing a lot of pain. I'm talking to people about it, they're offering solutions. I'm trying out solutions, but it's just not working. It's not working, and I don't know what to do. Can you help? And he kind of, like, sometimes, or a lot of times, you share your suffering with someone and they can kind of be pulled into it with you, and you're both in it with each other and neither one has a solution. But here it was like he didn't fall into my suffering with me. He sat there, he remained present, and I didn't feel he was detached or anything, but he wasn't getting pulled into my sad story. And I felt compassion from him, care from him. His name is Ben, by the way. And I'm still in contact with him. I just remember he like looked at me, and it just felt like he was very in the present moment, and he kind of looked and he said, you know, it's like you have the keys to a Ferrari. Like, you have the keys to this amazing machine, and you could be like driving to these amazing places, you could be feeling that engine go vroom, you could be hearing it, you could be enjoying it, and you don't know how to drive. And not only do you not know how to drive, you don't know even how to put the key in the ignition. And he said that, and I remember feeling like immediate relief of like, that stings, it's true, but he gets it. Like, he gets it. I don't, and I was finally able to kind of like have this clarity and admit to myself that like, yeah, I don't know how to drive this car. And I knew what he was referring to. He was referring to my mind, to my experience. He's like, yeah, you don't know how to drive. I was like, yep, I'm in a car crash right now. I don't know how to drive. And yeah, I remember like, that certainly didn't resolve all the suffering, you know, at once. But I remember like walking away from that first session with a kind of relief and confidence that like, I think I can work with this guy, and I think he can teach me how to drive. Because he seems to be cruising. And he seems to really care. And around that time as well, I found another teacher online, this time not in Ireland, in America, a teacher named Shinzen Young. I know everyone at the Monastic Academy is familiar with Shinzen. We use his system at the academy. I'm curious if the other members of the community have heard of Shinzen. He has a long history with Soryu, who's the head teacher here at the Monastic Academy. I found him, and he kind of said the same thing. Like, a lot of these teachers seem to be saying the same thing. And Shinzen put it like, when you're born, no one gives you a user's manual. And it just confirmed again. I was like, no one taught me how to deal skillfully with this experience. Like emotions, feelings, thoughts, sensations. No one taught me how to deal skillfully with this experience. And so there was a kind of confidence in hearing that, in understanding that. And like I said, it didn't get any easier straight away. It actually, in some ways, it got worse, because now that I kind of knew what the problem was, I started to get really familiar with the problem. Like, I started to see all the ways in which I couldn't drive this car. It wasn't just like surface level stuff. This was like deep, I don't know how to deal skillfully with my experience. When you become a resident in the Monastic Academy, there's like a welcoming ceremony, and each resident, we go around in a circle and they share why they came to the training center and why they stay. And I remember one of the longer term residents there shared at my ceremony. He said, I came to a point in my life where I realized I couldn't do the basics. Like, I couldn't have a shower while staying in the present moment. Like, that's the point I came to. And that really resonated with me. Like, I still see that most mornings. Like, I'm having a shower and I'm lost in thoughts about what's going to happen after. I'm lost in thoughts about what happened yesterday. Like, it's an ongoing process. And so seeing all the ways in which I was suffering was difficult and humbling. To come to a place in my experience where I was able to admit to myself that I don't even know how to do the basics. It was a challenge. I'm deeply grateful to those teachers like Ben and Shinzen, for being guys that came to the same realization themselves and actually took on the real challenge of learning how to drive this mind, and who succeeded, and who are driving comfortably, and who could assure me every time I went to them and said, like, I must be doing this wrong, it's getting worse. They would reassure me, no, you're just seeing all the ways you were doing it wrong before. You have to see them first, then you can drop them. And so, what I'd like to move into now is I'd like to share the Unified Mindfulness framework. This is something that Shinzen Young set up. And it's basically, so like, I found myself in this place where I admitted, like, I don't know how to drive this car, I don't know how to deal skillfully with my experience. And now I'd like to share what I did about it. So I feel very, very lucky to have found Shinzen, and to have found his system, Unified Mindfulness. At that time I was just very motivated. I saw that this mindfulness thing was helping me deal more and more skillfully with my experience, and I just became more and more passionate about it. but like I said, it still wasn't easy, and I feel like having unified mindfulness was just invaluable to me at that time. So for the last few minutes of the talk, I'd like to share kind of like a conceptual, give you a conceptual understanding and history of what unified mindfulness is, maybe a little bit about Shinzen, and then for the meditation portion of the evening we can actually explore it and get to try it out. Make sure I'm not leaving anything out. Yeah, so so there I was trying to learn how to drive this car, and there are like such an overwhelming array of different meditation videos, of different teachers, of different schools of thought, on and on and on, and it just seems to be growing and exploding. And it was quite like, it was quite overwhelming to see all the different rabbit holes I could go down, and which is the right way to go, what am I really doing here, this teacher saying this thing, this teacher saying that thing. It was all quite complex, and sometimes I felt like I was just kind of going down rabbit holes and not getting anywhere, and I needed something that could like give me like a tangible path to walk on, give me like an understanding for why I'm sitting down each evening to meditate, and unified mindfulness that's been that for me. So yeah, it's basically Shinzen is a teacher. He's got over 50 years of experience teaching. He's 75 now. He started teaching when he was like early 20s. He started training at age like 18. And he's been around the block. He's trained in Japan in like Zen monasteries, doing really, really deep training. But he's also come back from them and gone and trained with Jesuit priests and explored that area of the contemplative traditions of the world. And he's explored, and he's also gone and done like Native American ceremonies. And he's done all this as a scientist, as someone who is deeply, deeply interested and passionate about science. He's currently doing neuroscience research on mindfulness. He's working with institutions like Harvard, Carnegie Mellon, people who are doing like cutting edge research on mindfulness. Shinzen's working with them. And so what he's kind of done is he's looked at all of these contemplative traditions all over the world, and he's seen that like they're doing things to make themselves happier, and they seem to be working, and we find them the world over, right? And he's sort of, from his study of them, he's come up with what he would call like a modern, secular definition of mindfulness. What is this thing called mindfulness, and why should we do it? And so within unified mindfulness, mindfulness is described as, or defined as, 3 attentional skills working together. So the first skill is concentration. this is defined as the ability to focus on what you want for how long you want to focus. The second skill is clarity. This is the ability to keep track of your sensory experience moment by moment. And the third skill is equanimity. And this is the ability to allow your experience to come and go without pushing it away or pulling it towards you. And so within this unified mindfulness framework, that's how we're defining mindfulness, as the training of these three core skills. And when we train these core skills, we can maximize our pleasure and minimize our pain. When we train these core skills, we can derive more fulfillment from our pleasure, and we can suffer our pain less. We become more skillful with our sensory experience. We start to learn how to drive. We start to put the key in the ignition. And so this was a really powerful framework for me to have this conceptual understanding of what I was doing. I hope it's a definition that people here can use. And so now we can move in to the guided meditation portion of the evening, so now we know what mindfulness is, we have a conceptual understanding, and now we're going to explore the techniques we can use to actually train those skills. So within unified mindfulness, there's sort of a core technique that we use. It's called see, hear, feel. And so I'll just explain what see, hear, feel is, and then we can dive into some practice. So basically, we take our experience and we divide it up into three categories. We're going to make our experience we're going to make it workable so we can put techniques on it and actually build these skills. So we start by dividing it into three categories: see, hear, and feel. So the first category, see, involves anything you see in the external environment, colors, shapes, the room, and also anything you see internally, like any thoughts that you might be having in sort of your mind's eye. If your eyes are closed, the screen that you see behind your closed eyes, all of this we're going to put in the category of see. The next category is hear. This is anything you hear in your external environment. Sound of my voice, the silence in the room, anything you hear externally. And also it includes anything you hear internally. So like the chatter going on in your mind, if you're like recalling a song, anything that you're hearing internally, we can put into this category of hear. And lastly, there is feel. So feel is anything you're feeling. So your bum on the chair, your feet on the floor, temperature, wind, etc. And it also includes sort of internal feelings like emotions, anger, sadness, joy, pleasure, anxiety, whatever it is. And for simplicity's sake, to keep these three categories nice and neat, we're going to put smell and taste into the category of feel. So that's the first part. We've divided up our sensory experience into these three categories. What's nice about this, sort of for the modern mind, is like I haven't asked you to believe in anything. I haven't asked you to believe in anything the Buddha said or whatever. It's very simple. We've divided our experience up into these three categories. And now, how do we actually make a meditation out of that? So, yeah, I think I've done like a lot of talking, so I'd like to invite us into a meditation now. I'll give a bit more guidance as we go. Yeah. So it's always a good idea when beginning any meditation to just do a quick check-in on your posture. You can have your eyes open or closed for this meditation, whatever is most comfortable for you. A few tips on posture that I've picked up. One would be to, and this is a common one, but it really does help, is to imagine a string tied to the top of your head, and that kind of gently pulls your spine up, straightens your spine. And you're trying to find a nice position here where your head is over your shoulders are over your hips. They're kind of nice and evenly stacked. So that once you find that nice erect posture that's going to help you maintain wakefulness and concentration, if you can find a nice way to stack and balance your spine, it means you won't have to be efforting to keep this posture for the next, few minutes. You can just relax then. Relax your shoulders, relax your jaws, relax your eyes. These are common areas we carry tension throughout the day. It could be nice just to let go of that tension if we are holding any. Nice to feel our feet supporting us on the ground. Good balance. And so now that we've divided our experience up into these categories of see, hear, feel, we're going to take a moment to relax and just see where our attention is. What category is it in? Are we hearing something? Are we feeling something? Are we seeing something? If you're both seeing and feeling, if there's a lot going on, just choose one category, whichever one is most interesting to you. And once you've chosen that category, you're just going to soak your attention into it for a few moments. At the expense of everything else going on in your experience, you're going to choose to soak your attention in to just that experience that you've noted, whether it's in see or hear or feel. Soak your attention into it, stay with it for a few moments. And then let your attention wander again. You can relax. This is a very easy meditation. It's very basic. We're not trying to create anything. Not trying to do anything fancy. We're just noticing where our experience is, where our attention is. Deciding what category it's in. Is it see? Is it hear? Is it feel? And then we're soaking our attention into that experience for a few moments. And then letting it go again. To help with this process, we can incorporate a label. So if you happen to notice your attention is on the sensations in your feet, that would be the category of feel. You can label that experience feel, and that's just going to help soak your attention into just that for a few moments. And then let your attention wander again. Notice where it lands. If it lands in the same place, that's fine. We can label the same experience twice, 3 times, 4 times, as many times as we like. I'm going to say a few labels out loud just so you can get a feel for the pace. You can continue to say the labels internally. Feel. Hear. Feel. Feel. See. Feel. So you can hear I'm keeping an even pace, a nice neutral tone with the labels. You could go at a pace that's a little faster, or you could use a pace that's a little slower. Whatever works for you, this is your time, this is your meditation. Make it your own, enjoy it. Enjoy exploring your experience in this way. If you find concentration is quite strong and you don't think you need the labels, you could drop them. That's an option. If you find concentration hard, then you could say the label a little bit more sternly, a little more louder in your mind, and just help reinforce it. Try not to be too hard on yourself if you find it difficult. To the best of your ability, remain curious, open, just exploring what's here in this new way. So know that anytime your mind wanders and you get lost in thought, every time you bring it back to the present moment, you're building that skill of concentration. That's not a time to beat yourself up when you notice you've been lost. That's a time to celebrate. You've just completed one repetition and you've strengthened your skill of concentration. As you notice a new experience in a new category, and you give your attention to just that experience, the more you soak into it, the more you become familiar with it, the more you increase your skill of clarity. Almost like water soaking into a sponge, you're just exploring your experience, becoming clearer about it. What do the sensations in my feet actually feel like? What's that sound like when I just allow it to be as it is and just give it my attention for these few moments? And lastly, if there's difficulty in this meditation for you, there's a little bit of, oh, I can't get this, oh, I'm tired, oh, I can never meditate. The more you can allow that experience to be as it is, not to fight it, not to push it away, the more you can allow it to be in the background, while you continue to note, label, and soak your attention into each experience. The more you can allow that, the more you're strengthening this skill of equanimity. It's a very deep skill, can be very deeply trained. That voice that says, I'll never get meditation, I'll never figure it out. What if you just completely allowed that voice to be there, gave it permission to get as loud as it wanted? Let it hang around for as long as it wants. In this way we can strengthen this skill of equanimity. You choose to note something, and then when you soak into it, that experience moves or vanishes, changes. That's okay, just stay with whatever is there. What's there when it's gone? Follow its movement. Keep your attention with it just for a few moments before moving on to the next experience. If at any point all this seeing and hearing and feeling becomes overwhelming, you can always return to your breath. It's always here in the category of feel. You can ground yourself in the breath. Choosing to label it if you wish. Okay, that was really good work, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. We'll just take a 5 or so minute break now. This is actually an opportunity to practice in motion. So for the next few minutes you can get up, stretch, get a drink, go to the bathroom, whatever you need to do. But just try and keep the practice going as you do so. What are you seeing, hearing, feeling? Keeping the practice going in each moment. Practice in motion is more difficult, but it's a really good way to train these skills. So yeah, I'd invite us to do that for the next few minutes, and I'll ring a bell after 5 minutes or so, and we can take our seats again. So welcome back everyone. I hope you enjoyed that practice in motion. So a lot of you going outside, I went outside as well. It's just really beautiful to practice on a day like today. So so we've kind of covered these 3 core skills. I hope you got a bit of a taste or experiential understanding of what they are. This concentration, this clarity, this equanimity. Again, relating it back to this broader conceptual understanding of, we train these skills to bring them to bear on our pleasure so that we can derive more fulfillment from our pleasure. And we train them so that when the pain comes, we can be more skillful with it and suffer it less. I hope I've gotten across the importance, of training these skills so that we have them. And so now I'd like to move into another part of the unified mindfulness system. We just divided up our experience into see, hear, feel, and we did a simple noting and labeling practice. But there are other ways that we can train these skills. Shinzen has what he calls the unified library for training attention. Sometimes I feel like he spends too much time in these labs studying mindfulness, and he comes out with these elaborate acronyms, the unified library for training attention. But it's actually really helpful, because when we have this broader understanding, okay, what am I doing here? I'm training the skills. With this, so it's actually ultra, which is nice. It simplifies this ultra. With ultra, we can then really move into life and be empowered by the amount of different techniques all over the world that exist. So we don't just have to follow our breath. We don't just have to do mantra meditation. We're not limited to any of these. And rather than be overwhelmed by the amount of techniques that are out there, for me, this system, specifically ultra, I feel empowered by the amount of techniques that there are. They fall into one of these 4 quadrants within this library. There's appreciate, transcend, nurture positive, and express. And within these 4 quadrants, Shinzen has put every technique that he's found all over the world. They fit into one of these quadrants. And all of them train the core skills. So, for me, at certain times, loving kindness meditation was what I needed. And I didn't know if that was okay. Is that really going to push me along on the path? Am I wasting my time? These are the kind of doubts that I would go through. But I'd be reassured by this system that, no, this is a valid part of the contemplative tradition as a whole. It trains the core skills the same way any other technique does, and it's what I need right now, and so I can do it. At other times, and so loving kindness would fit into the nurture positive quadrant. At other times, what was needed was to push through my experience, to see through my experience, to go beyond it, to utilize this transcend quadrant, which is where we can examine our experience in a certain way, And when we do that, we can see that experiences that we thought were fixed and sticky and contracted, when we look at them in a certain way, we can see their moving quality, we can see through them, and we can go beyond them. And yeah, so really what I'm trying to express is, with this ultra part of unified mindfulness, you can be empowered to go out and take whatever technique it is that you want and make it your own, and know that it's okay. And you can really get creative, you know, you can walk your own path, you can have your favorite go-to techniques in different quadrants, and you can know that I'm training these skills every time. Yeah, so I think we've got about 20 minutes before we go into the questions and answers portion. So I think I'd like to give 2 sample techniques that we can practice with each other. Yeah, I think no one put up their hand when I asked, is anyone here a first time meditator? So might be fun to explore the transcend quadrant. And then after that we can move into the nurture positive quadrant. And yeah, all the while keeping within this sort of secular, modern framework of skill building, experience exploring, no dogma, no ideology. Yeah, so. So picking from the transcendence quadrant, we're going to move into a technique called focus on flow. We are going to be becoming curious about flow in our experience. Just before we do that, I'd invite you to do a quick check-in on your posture. You can straighten it up like we did before. Get that nice stack. Relax into it. Shinzen calls this stretching up and settling in. And it doesn't have to be done just at the start of the meditation. So long as you're mindful about it, you can do it during your meditation. It can, if you're getting drowsy or sleepy at any point, it can promote wakefulness. So I'd advise you to do that. It's not breaking the rules. Just one last tip on posture, tucking in your chin can help just straighten up that last top of your spine, that last bit of the neck. Can really elevate it, and you can feel more wakeful, more concentrated. So, similar to the last meditation, we're going to work with see, hear, feel. We're going to let our experience go broad, wherever it wants. then when we choose to, we can notice where our attention is. And now we're going to be attuning to this flow. What is flow? Flow is any movement or change in our experience. Any movement or change. So when you notice some part of your experience, whether it's in see, or hear, or feel, can you notice any moving quality? Any quality of movement or change, increase or decrease, faster, slower, more intense, less intense? Just paying attention to that movement for a few moments, whatever category it's in. Then letting your attention wander again. If your attention is pulled back to the same place, go for that again, no worries. If it's pulled to a new place, notice that. See if you can notice any quality of movement or change. Could be subtle, could be gross, could be large, could be small. Just noticing, not making any effort to create flow. Just doing our best to detect it wherever we can find it. If you do find flow in one category that seems to be prominent and very available, then you could stick with that. Choose to stick just with that category and get curious about that movement, labeling it every few seconds or so. Or if you're noticing flow more broadly in your experience, you can continue to explore that. And if this is quite difficult for you, your breath is always available, always moving in, moving out. You can use the same labels, see, hear, feel. But just know that you're doing it within this setting of focusing on flow. no one experience is better than another. Whatever is present now, being with just that. When you choose to note and you experience, it can sometimes seem like you're leaving all of these other experiences behind. They all want attention too. Do your best to let them fall to the background and give your attention completely to just what you've noted, just for those few moments. And then you can let it go again. Okay, awesome work everyone. We are really putting in the time here. We're going to move on to another technique now from another quadrant. This time we're going to move to the nurture positive quadrant, explore a technique from there. Take another moment to stretch up your spine. Settle in again to this straight, alert posture, supported by your feet on the ground, or wherever you're resting into the ground. Feel supported by your base. And we're going to move into a technique called Feel Good. So we're going to be cultivating positive emotions in the body. There are a number of ways we can do this. You might think of someone or something, someone you love, a favorite pet, a memory, a beach or a walk you like to go on, something. You can recall something in your mind that makes you feel good. So that might be an image in C space, in the category of C. You could also, if it's available to you, try a mantra. You could try a metta phrase. Could be, may I be peaceful, may I be happy, may I be well and happy. For me, it's something like, hey John, you're doing great. Generates a kind of warmth and comfort. Really mean it if you're saying it. And another way to generate positive emotion in the body that is surprisingly simple, do not underestimate it, it's just inviting a kind of half smile to your face, just relaxing your jaws and your face and allowing a smile. Can often be quite an immediate hit of positive emotion. Oftentimes when we try to cultivate positive emotion, the opposite comes up. Resistance, all the stuff we don't like. Now is not a good time to feel good. Do your best to have equanimity with any resistance that might be arising. Use your skill of concentration to keep your attention on the positive emotion, wherever it is, no matter how small it is. And then using your skill of clarity, soak into it. Allow it to spread and grow big throughout your body if it wants to. The label is completely optional with this technique. You're invited to just soak into the emotion if you want. Concentration is hard, of course, you can bring in the label. And whatever you're using to create this positive emotion, we're going to call that the feel-good bell. And whenever you feel the good feeling beginning to fade, you can just ring that bell again. Recall the image, recall the mantra. Re-invite that smile on your face. Soak into the feel-good, spread it throughout your whole body. Allow allowing everything else to be in the background. If it wants to spread outside your body, let it. The technique isn't resonating so much, you're not feeling so much positive emotion, then taking this time to put in the hard work, training those 3 core skills. And if it's really hard, you can always switch to just see, hear, feel, working with whatever is coming up. And if the positive emotion is alive, really soaking into it, let go into it, enjoy it. And allow it to be there fully. Hey, nice work everyone. Hope that was enjoyable. See some smiles, which is good. Yeah, so yeah, I just want to soak into that myself. So yeah, I hope I've gotten across clearly this unified mindfulness system and how it's helped me, and I hope you've managed to pull something from what I've said that you can take with you and will help you. For these last 20 minutes or so, we'll move into some questions and answers. So if anyone has any questions on what we covered, I'd be really happy to try and answer.
Oh, well, could you say the 4 quadrants again?
Yes, so it's the Unified Library for Training Attention, Ultra, and the 4 quadrants are appreciate, transcend, nurture positive, and express is the last one.
Okay.
Yeah. There's actually a website, unifiedmindfulness.com, and also shinzenyong.com, and there's like free PDFs on there of pretty much everything I've just said. Really nice diagrams and stuff of like the ultra system, and yeah, I'd encourage you to check them out if you're interested.
Sorry, that's supposed to be on.
Yeah, so I guess it's on vibrate, that's why.
Okay, so sorry. Maybe it is a question.
Let's try, let's try.
Doesn't matter.
Could you give an example of what you might do with express that quadrant?
Yeah, I might actually just explain briefly like what ultra is. It's like a little bit above my pay grade. I wish like Shinzen was here to give you like a really good explanation. So the appreciation family includes all of the appreciation techniques, which is kind of like just being with what is, noticing what is, training the 3 skills around what is. So it includes like all the breath practices where you're just sitting focusing on your breath. It includes body sweeping, like the Goenka style, and other kinds of like body scanning. Like the body scan I mentioned that I found a few years ago, that would be an appreciation technique. These days there's a lot of like popularity around working with emotions in meditation and how to do that. That would be an appreciation technique. You're being with the emotions that are there. And you could walk the whole path with just the appreciation quadrant. There are whole paths within that, like the breath practice, for example. Then there is the transcendence quadrant. Yeah, this includes all of the techniques that like focus on going beyond the senses, going for transcendence. So focus on flows, like that includes a lot of common techniques within Buddhism where you're trying to notice impermanence in your experience. Trying to think of other techniques within that. There's like in Zen there's the koan practices where you're like asking a question over and over again until the mind gets tired, you know, this kind of thing. That's another like transcendence. So that's the transcendence quadrant. Nurture positive is it includes like prayer is an example of nurture positive. The sort of positive psychology mantras that we can do are examples of nurture positive. We can like think of like, you know, when you want to replace negative thoughts with positive ones, so you kind of repeat the positive thought. That's an example of nurture positive. Prayer. There's also other cultivation techniques that fall within that. Some chanting techniques where you cultivate compassion, which we'll be practicing at the end of the evening. We end these evenings with Om Mani Padme Hum, which is a chance to cultivate compassion. So that's the nurture positive quadrant. And then the express is it's funny, express, like Shinzen is like constantly changing this system and updating it and revising it and adding new things and taking them away. And Soryu, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Soryu, our head teacher. He has a really strong background in Zen Buddhism, and he was the one who told Shinzen, you need to have some of these Zen practices in there. They're so powerful, and they're not in the transcendence, they're not in appreciate, they're not in nurture positive, where are they? And so Shinzen added the express quadrant, which is, you're tuning into this sort of spontaneous quality and experience. If you go to a Zen monastery, even if you watch them on YouTube, and you see like legitimate Zen monks walking around the monastery, they've got this kind of bounce to their step. It's called like the Zen bounce. And you kind of tune into the spontaneity in your movement, and you can actually make it an object of meditation. Very enjoyable, and cultivate a lot of energy. So that's an example of the express quadrant. Shinzen calls that auto move.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's express in a different way than I thought express would be like say something, but this is more, yeah.
Yeah, but
Like
and it's also, it includes chanting as well.
Okay.
Chanting is another way we can practice it. We actually do it in the monastery each morning. You start chanting, and then you kind of tune into this like just happeningness of the chanting.
Wow.
There's no self-chanting, it's just kind of happening. And it's one of those techniques where you have to kind of guess and grope and just like practice it, just allow yourself to look silly and kind of tune into it. But when you do tune into it, you can really start to make it an object of meditation. And it's very energizing. That's why we do it each morning, to cultivate energy for the day. So auto move, auto chant. There are two examples of
Okay.
express.
Great. Thank you.
I'm going to try to use my words as carefully as I can, using your three concepts for my question. Clarity is where I want to start in the middle, but it seems I'm experiencing a contradiction between concentration and equanimity. Because in concentration I associate it with focus, choosing a point to focus on, and becoming singular with that point of focus. That appears to me to be selective. It's not equal, because whatever I chose to focus on, why did I choose that? I'm not being equal to everything. So this seems to be a contradiction, and if I try to work that triangle, I'm stuck with the fact that this teaching doesn't seem clear to me. For the one thing, it seems to be baiting people with pleasure and being good meditators and developing a skill to control your mind and being proud of that or happy about that. And I think, if I had a Ferrari, I'd want to be able to drive it, of course, but I'd want to be able to say, maybe I should get an electric car. Maybe I should. So in other words, ethics and aesthetics. Pleasure is an aesthetic pleasure. You mentioned Eckhart Tolle. He speaks very profoundly about the pleasure body and the pain body.
Yes.
And Buddhism is especially clear about how if you seek pleasure, that is not actually that wise.
Yes.
In fact, it's the root of ignorance, because you're defining what makes you happy, and it always leads to an addictive relation to the object of pleasure.
Yes.
So, not to be repressive, because that's also clinging and pushing away. So I still find that this teaching if you didn't say the last thing, which is Zen,
Mm.
which is also what I consider Quakerism in American religion. It's kind of like the Zen of American or Christian religion,
Yeah.
because they really understand we have to act and express ourselves socially from the level of insight into being clear about what's really our values, who are we, how do we define our ethics and our pleasure. What we think is good should be pleasurable for everybody, but there's a naivete there, as far as I can tell, from suffering for a few years in human condition. So, is my question clear?
Everything you said very much like resonated with me, but I just want to be clear on like what the actual question is.
I perceive, if I were to put it technically, I would say to use this triangle of meta language and technique focus, that concentration, dharana in yoga, it has to be beyond seeking pleasure, because you can become a dark lord, according to many teachings, by seeking your own pleasure.
Yeah.
And becoming skillful in manipulating everyone to give you enjoyment.
Yeah.
This is a very sick thing,
Yes.
and we've seen it in many movies, Hannibal Lecter, whatever.
Yeah.
So these are perverse. They grow in a religious society or a so-called spiritual society because the teachings aren't clear
Yeah.
about the relationship between seeking pleasure and ethics and empowering somebody to have powerful technique.
Yeah.
I don't want powerful leaders and mindfulness people if they don't know the difference between pleasure that is selfish
Yes.
and actual happiness, or
Yeah. Yeah.
the elimination of the possibility of suffering
Yeah.
is an insight into the human ego. This teaching seems to indulge the ego.
Yeah.
As far as I can see, it coddles it a little bit.
Yeah.
It says, "Oh, you're doing
Yeah.
good, John. You're meditating great."
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
You're developing not love of God.
Yeah.
There's no talk of God here.
Yeah.
It's secular.
Yeah.
So there's the transcendence category isn't being clearly explicated for me.
Yes.
And please don't anybody take any that, I'm just confessing
I
my
think
confusion
you're-
about these teachings.
I think you're right. If you're a
I
spirit,
respect Soryu completely
Yes.
because I see him as not being, he's not seeking his own pleasure.
Yes.
He's trying to get out of the suffering of society that is unenlightened.
yeah.
And that's profound, and he's doing a great job. So I don't want to really be a critic here at all, but I study this stuff, and I try to practice.
And I agree with you. If you're a spiritual bypasser, this technique is like, this system is perfect for you. You can like cultivate the three skills, feel that you're cultivating the three skills, know you're cultivating the three skills, and deny the suffering around you left and right, which I think is what you're expressing.
It's part of it.
Yeah. Like I know even Shinzen, do you know Shinzen Young? He's the founder of this system. His teacher, Sasaki Roshi, he's one of these Zen masters who was actually involved in a lot of sex scandals. This came to light after years of him teaching the Dharma, and here he was involved in this kind of corruption, which is awful. So my understanding of where Shinzen's coming from with it is, so ideally you're going to work with a teacher who won't let you go off in these directions. Like we have interviews each evening with Soryu, and he keeps us in line with what's really true. And with you're hopefully going to work with a teacher who can call you on your shit, who can see the negative behaviors in you and tell you need to go there. Yeah, for me in my own experience, it's I feel like I would be a spiritual bypasser if I could, but the suffering just keeps coming and I just keep having to meet it, and I don't know where I'd be without these 3 skills. They really help me to be with it and to accept it. So I'm like, in one sense, the luckiest person in the world, and also the unluckiest, because that is not fun, having to bring the 3 skills to the suffering all the time. But I do it, yeah, I think feedback is really important when using a system like this. Like I said, having teachers who can call students out on their shit, see where they're turning away, and help them look into it. And then if you don't have it, then what? Then they're gonna remain slaves to this stuff, and they're not gonna have the skills to be able to turn towards it at some point, and they might stay, unenlightened their whole life. That's the answer that came. I don't know if it answered your question.
Sufficiently to feel brotherhood.
Thank you. I forget, did these finish at 6:50 or 7?
Well, if there's any more questions, we could maybe have one more question, and then we can move into announcements.
Cool.
I've got a question, I think that relates to this, so there's the happiness grid, which actually lists different benefits of this kind of training, which includes being more of service to others. I think maybe it pertains to some of what you're addressing. So I'm just wondering, how has this for you on your path, as you've worked this system, how would you say this has made you more ethical or helped you to be a more loving or kind person? Or maybe how do you see it doing that for others too?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I'm one of those meditators who likes to put in the hours, do 2-3 hours a day if I can, and yeah, cultivate this very strong, specific set of skills on the cushion. And then where I think it makes me more ethical, one way is with the skill of equanimity, of really cultivating that equanimity on the cushion, and then moving off the cushion and into the world, and yeah, really allowing my suffering to be there, seeing it fully. It's just left me with a compassion for other people, and a desire to be with them and serve them in their suffering, because I've been so honest about it in myself. The equanimity just allows me to stop playing games, to stop watching Netflix instead of being with my suffering, to stop doing whatever it is instead of being with my suffering. It really allows me to be there, and because I'm able to show up with my suffering, I really think it does help me show up with other people and their suffering. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I guess we'll wrap it up there. Thanks everyone.
Mm.